right, guys, I am here with Jackie Ding. Jackie Ding, you have had many wins in Street Mod, and you came off last season in your Supra. You got something a little bit different this year. Why the change? What do you feel about it? Tell the people why you went with the M2.
Well, first of all, I wanted to get a real BMW this time. There's a lot of fun, and we've won so much, and we've really accomplished a lot with the Supra platform, and even now we have customers like Brandon and guys out there chasing records, and, we're super happy to support them. But it's time to move on, after like 3 years developing, we want to do something new, we want to try something fresh, and, this is kind of our next platform.
Are you getting any hate for it?
Plenty, people think it's fat, people think it's ugly, people think it's fat and ugly, so it comes and goes, but like, I don't care. This thing's fast. It's really good. I think there's a really good base underneath it. The engine powertrain is really good. Suspension is awesome. The electronics, there's a lot of fun to be had with that. So we're really excited to dive more into it. So far, it's stock. So with just camber plates so far, and there's a lot of stuff to come. So we're excited to go.
Okay, so even if you win this weekend, you're not done.
Oh yeah, no. This is step one. This is the first Gridlife event for this car, and it's the first Gridlife event for the PhD team with the M2, and we got a lot more to come. A lot more mods. And the eventual goal for this car is not Street GT, not Street Mod. We're trying to go track mod, so it'll be a lot of fun.
We're getting a serious man right now. I kind of like it. He's in the zone. All right, guys, let's see how he does out there. Thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you.
Thanks, Reese. That was another FCP Euro Pit and Paddock report down here from Watkins Glen International. Welcome back to Gridlife Live. I'm Kyle Heyer, joined by Greg Creamer and Joel Otto. We'll get into Joel here in a little bit. Greg, welcome back. Track Battle, NOS Energy Track Battle Championship Qualifying 3 coming up here in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, and we were kind of hoping this one might end up dry so people would be able to really put in some runs. It's been misting pretty much the whole time. Not rain, but just enough to keep the track damp. So I think we're going to have to see something awfully miraculous happen. But again, we talk about it. There were people in some of the classes that struggled. Opportunities here. You're still going for the wet track record, and it still looks very likely that we could be doing the podium sprint in wet conditions. So if you're in that top 5, you want to be out there if you didn't get out earlier to get some track knowledge.
Gridlife Live is powered by Hyundai N. Hyundai N, never just drive. And Falcon, the official tire of Gridlife Track Battle. This is the NOS Energy Track Battle Championship Qualifying 3. And next up, we're going to take a look at our Hyundai N track preview. The 3.4-mile course here at Watkins Glen International, Greg. It is not the original course here. That started back in 1948, downtown. 6.6-mile street course where it all began until 1952. That's when they moved the track. But here's the run down the front straightaway, down Franklin Street, up the hill, past the gorge, all the way to the Stone Bridge at the top, back around Milliken's Corner, back to the start. 1956, this is the original layout of Watkins Glen International run until 1971 when they added the boot section. That was the 11-turn road course that we know and love without the addition of the bus stop. That came in 1992. It all starts with a run down the hill towards turn number 1, the 90, which used to be the last corner here, Greg. It is now turn number 1.
And it falls away down into it. There's a lot of runoff down there, but a big curb interrupts that whole runoff area. In the wet, it's diabolical. Stay off it. Up through the S's, normally just easy flat. Now you're a little tentative going up through there. Then that long blast into one of the most exciting parts of the track, the inner loop, where in the dry you just clout curbs, in the wet you stay clear of them.
Then you head through the carousel, downhill through turn 5. That's modeled after one of the corners on the street course. Down the hill towards turn number 6, the laces of the boot, a very challenging turn that leads you into turn 7. The toe of the boot, sharp downhill into sharp uphill, then to turn 8, the heel, turn 9, off camber, Greg. That's a challenging corner.
Probably the trickiest track here, and the runoff is non-existent. There's a big blue wall right at the exit if you get it wrong. Turn 10, deceptively quick, and turn 11, very fast as well. For turn 11, huge wall right at the exit of that corner. You better be on your game through there.
Well, the story of Watkins Glen International started in 1948, but my story here started in 2007 with this kid right here. This is Joel, and I met Joel. He lived in my neighborhood back in Rochester, New York, about an hour and a half north of here. And Joel, you took me on a family vacation here in 2007, and this is kind of where it all started for me.
Yep. Yeah, it's so cool to be here right now. I mean, coming back 2007, like practically 15 years, right? Just being here right now and being able to experience this with you in this aspect, like, how cool is that?
Yeah, the story started back then. In 2007, when it came to NASCAR here, and then I think it was the next year, 2008, Friday night Grand Am racing was my first opening to road racing. And our experience back then, that was so cool to us because of how open the paddock was. We could kind of see all the drivers, and it's come full circle.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's just being here today and being able to see this and just looking back from where we came from, it's just so cool to be here and seeing Gridlife as such an awesome event. It truly is special.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
I want to ask you a question. You introduced Kyle to this, and how do you feel now looking at where Kyle has ascended to within the ranks of motorsports? I mean, he has climbed a ladder of his own.
Yeah, I think it is so cool. Like seeing, just coming here with him as a fan, we were in the stands watching just like, anyone else, and now we're here and Kyle's doing this. I mean, I'm so proud of him, and I think it's so cool, what he's able to do.
Yeah, he does a great job of it.
Thank you. Yeah, and actually, Joel got an opportunity to come here in 2021 when I was here with World Challenge as well. So he got to see, I kind of live a double life, a little Hannah Montana in that aspect. Or you put the wig on and you come over here and you wear some buttons for a weekend. And he saw that side. I was doing some pit reporting then, but to come here, the Gridlife family is my family, right? It's a small group of people, and it takes a lot to put this together. And obviously, we're trying to fill a very large gap here in this paddock. It's an enormous racetrack that's built for an enormous crowd, and we're such a small little group. We're trying to make it look like there's a presence here, and a huge thanks to NOS Energy and Advanced Auto Parts and Toyo and all the partners and people that come out to really make this event feel like there's something happening here this weekend, despite all the challenges, despite the weather. It's really cool to be here.
Well, let's put it in perspective, though, Kyle. How many other series can say they have a 50-car field here?
Not
well, a lot.
And the ones that can, we're punching above our weight a little bit, I think, in that regard.
So it's impressive.
It really is. It's really cool. So with that, we're going to get set up for our NOS Energy Track Battle Championship Qualifying 3. And Joel, this is your first real experience with Time Attack, at least from a broadcast perspective, seeing this. So we're going for lap time here, but it's rainy. And in the past, these drivers wouldn't go out and drive in the rain because there was no point. You're going for track records. Well, you can't really break a record in the rain, so they're getting experience that they've never gotten before. And this track is known for being pretty slippery and treacherous.
Right, yeah, this is so cool. I cannot believe that they're going to go out here in this rain and this weather and, put down the fastest lap that they possibly can. That is just so cool.
Yeah, so qualifying is up next. And again, we're trying to stay in the top 5 in your particular class. There are 7 classes that are about to head on the racetrack, and then this is their last opportunity to get inside that top 5. The podium sprint a little bit later today at around 2:40. That is when they get 2 laps to run their lap. And think back to NASCAR qualifying. It's basically you get 2 laps to make it count. And in the rain, we're going to see drivers pushing past the limit a little bit, which should be a lot of fun to watch. But this is our Sunday Cup category, which is probably the most accessible in the Gridlife paddock. These are Honda Fits, Mazda 2s, Ford Fiestas. The only things you can really do to these cars, suspension and brakes. You can't really add any aero bits. You can't do anything to the motor. No turbos allowed. This is as accessible as motorsports gets. You can compete, and I've seen it, with a completely stock Honda Fit.
And that makes it really cool. And you and Charlie, during one of the drift sessions, were talking about where's the fun in not tearing a car apart and being under it, modifying this and that. And I'm thinking to myself, where's the fun today? Being dry, being warm, getting out of the trailer, getting right into the car and going. And for those who don't have a lot of technical acumen and don't have a lot of budget, this Sunday Cup is the perfect introductory spot to bring a car out on a racetrack. If you've been soloing, autocrossing, or whatever, and you want to take it to that next level, Sunday Cup's it.
And Joel, you know the challenges of owning a lot of cars. And if you have to have one car, it's got to do it all. It's got to be the grocery getter. It's got to be the race car. It's got to get you to and from work. And this is probably a perfect example. I mean, of the cars that you could run, Fitz, Mazda 2s, Ford Fiestas, Toyota Yaris, this is accessible motorsport at the highest level.
Right. It is so cool. Like this guy right here, we have a license plate on his car, daily driver, and now he's going out and running laps at Watkins Glen, and in this weather. Like, how cool is that?
Well, here's a story about that particular car. That's an orange car that is owned by the Hard Times Group, and which is Charlie's group of friends. And Anthony Novelli, in the past, has run his own Honda Fit. He had a trailer for it. A couple of months ago, out of his parking lot, his entire trailer, car included, was stolen. Wow. The truck came up, hooked up to it, towed it away. They found it. They tracked it down. And the problem is they found the trailer. They did not find the car. And the person that was there, long story short, They never recovered the car. So this was donated for Anthony for the season by Kyle, and by Kyle Carsons. And now Anthony's going to jump in this and race it for the season. So this is not his car. It's being gifted to him for the year to go out there and run it. And what a cool story. Again, community coming around people that have had problems this season, Greg. Again, this is the spirit of Gridlife.
Well, you snap the visor down, and you want to beat everybody, including your best buddy, right? Especially your best buddy, because if you don't, you're not going to live it down. So you want to get after it. But everybody this paddock is full of people who share one thing, and it's a love for motorsports, and they're good friends, and that's what they love. And just to keep it in perspective here, Anthony Novelli in this car, he's the guy on the bubble right now. He's 5th in that Sunday Cup category in terms of making it into the podium sprint. Now, that time was set Friday when it was a lot drier on the track, so it's probably going to be safe, but I just want to always keep that in perspective. It's the top 5 that move on. Don't forget, you can still get a wet lap record, and that counts in terms of the record book, and also 6th on back and the points you earn for the season, they still matter as well. So if you're 8th, then you can move up to 6th. Maybe you don't get the podium sprint, but you get that higher point count. So it's critical.
Yeah, it certainly is. And 6th right now is Luis Rodriguez in the number 357 Honda Fit. And Daniel Malloy in the 801 Mazda 2. He was tied with Rodriguez coming into this session, but unfortunately, we saw this morning he got into the wall out of turn 10. He's okay. Car is certainly done for, unfortunately, Greg. So that will be where his weekend ends. Chris Wolf in the number 1. He rides 8th at a 238.7. So he's about 4 seconds away from Anthony's time as they roll off the grid here, Greg. So there's still a chance, but they're going to have to really wheel it if they want to break into that top 5.
Yeah, that's going to be, I think, a really tough ask. However, you take a look back right now, all the way back to 11th, and Danny Kruger in his Honda Fit, the 545, he's only 2 or 3 seconds off some of the guys in front. So if he can find a little bit here, he might be able to move up. May not crack that top 5, but he could shuffle that order and get himself a few more points here. So you never know.
And we're seeing the same battle that we saw at Carolina Motorsports Park a couple of weeks ago. Jacob Abbott, Michael Ross Smith right at the top, 229.4, 229.7. Remember what happened in the podium sprint? We run those cars as a group in black flag elimination style each lap. Michael Ross Smith got incorrectly black flagged and lost the podium sprint like that. So he's going on a little bit of a resurgence to try to get that first place trophy here at Watkins Glen. That'll be a fun battle to watch in the podium sprint, but these cars accelerating now. And Joel, this is the fun part about this because we know Watkins Glen is a very fast racetrack, but triple digits is pushing it here in these cars on the backstretch.
Yeah, I bet.
Especially with that long climb up through the S's.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you even gain speed necessarily.
You definitely
in
don't.
These cars. So, and the one difference for the podium sprint for the Sunday Cup cars, everybody in the pool, and that's kind of apropos today, everybody goes out at the same time, and then slowest lap, you get knocked out. And what happened was on a track, even at CMP, and they're certainly going to do it here, in these cars, if you can get a tow, you're going to run right with somebody, and it was just a case of mistaken reading on it. They weren't sure which car it was for. The wrong guy pitted, and so now they're just going to discontinue the time, but we will continue with the run. So, just refining things. This is the first year of this, in my mind, revolutionary format for the time attack concept with this NOS Energy Track Battle Championship, and we're going to be tweaking things.
Yeah, certainly, and I think that's the goal, is to continue to make it better. And we started with the previous format was just every lap matters. If you run a fast lap on Friday morning, you could win the weekend right there, but it was hard to follow it on the broadcast. It was hard to know when that moment would happen. Now we're forcing it to happen in the podium sprint. You got to perform then and there, and the rest of the weekend is all prepping for that. And Craig, the visibility, very poor. I mean, it's not quite as bad up here. Again, we're kind of on top of the grandstands a little bit, but you get down low, especially 10 over into the boot, and it is pretty foggy looking over there.
It really is. This sort of misty fog has really dropped in spots here, and that is the exit, I think, of turn 9. And you can see just how tough it is for these cameras. And keep in mind, our cameras, they zoom, and when you zoom, it not only brings the cars in, but it compresses everything that's in the middle of it. I've seen some shots with a big zoom camera where it's just a light little snowfall, and it looks like a blizzard because it compresses it. So it's not quite as bad as this looks, but from where we can see, it's definitely hazy out there. There's a lot more spray coming off the back of these cars than when we were finishing the Q2 session, so it's going to be tough. And as you can see, some of our cameras, they are getting pretty well pasted with moisture out there as well.
There's Michael Ross Smith into turn 1 and kicking things off, kind of running middle of the road, but everyone knows to avoid that paint. That was the trouble spot yesterday. Here's a look at our Falcon Sunday Cup running order there, the advancing and the chasing group. Of course, that dilly-dally time, that is not a legal time there, that 2:14, 2:11. That got thrown out for a course cut, I believe. So Abbott is your leader, and Novelli is in that 4:11. But for everyone else, they're trying to get, basically the cut line is that 2:34, 7:14. So Rodriguez is the next driver that's trying to do better than that in that 3:57. We'll see if he ends up on track going for it here, but he is on track and is going for it.
Well, and the interesting thing here, too, is in these conditions, these times were set on a much, much, much drier track. It was marginally damp when they ran on Friday. This track is well and truly wet right now. And in these conditions, I'd be surprised if these guys get within 30 seconds of their best time from Friday. So they're going to need to really have something spectacular happen. But, again, for Abbott, Smith, Dietland, Rice, and Novelli, with the chance being pretty solid that podium sprint's going to be run in the wet, they're going to be want to get out there and get some laps in.
Well, here's the other thing is that Matt Dietland is not on the racetrack, and he had an accident this morning at turn number 11. So that car wasn't completely damaged, like totaled, but it is damaged, and he's not on the racetrack right now. If he is too damaged to run the podium sprint, that would shift the cut line again down to what would be Daniel Malloy, but he also had an accident, and that would shift it down to Chris Wolf at that point in the number 1 car. So that will really shift and shuffle this Falcon Sunday Cup podium sprint should Matt Dietland not be able to participate later this afternoon.
Obviously, we hope he's able to get that thing fixed because he earned a spot, and it wasn't great conditions on Friday, so he really earned it here. And as you can see, folks, it is just this spray is just enough to really affect things a little bit out there right now. And I'm keeping an eye on this next time through will be the first time they've actually got a lap as opposed to just their out lap, and we'll start to take a look at the times and see where they clock in.
Yeah, there's Michael Ross Smith leaving turn 9 now, and he was pushing it in the session this morning, and we certainly saw him get a little sideways at some moments. And again, very small tires on these cars. We're all running Falcon RT660 spec tire category, 205 width tires, so not very big, not a lot of meat on the bone here, but still grippy enough to make it work. As right behind him is Jacob Abbott. That's the newest generation Honda Fit that was so successful at Carolina Motorsports Park. But here comes the 395. His best time on the weekend at 2:29, 7:14. I imagine we're going to be much slower than that, 2:54, 1:76. So it is still pretty treacherous. But into turn 1, you can see the spray, and he's going to arc it in, stay middle road again. And he's going to track out onto that paint a little bit. Here comes Jacob Abbott. You can see the rooster tails, the water kicking up. It has definitely not gotten any drier from this morning.
No, it's not. I mean, I wouldn't call it, torrential and a wash, but it is wet. It is absolutely wet. And the thing is oftentimes the narrower tire in the rain is actually a more effective one because there's less chance of the water getting trapped under that tire than a big fat meat, even with all the sipes and grooves. So then you hydroplane a lot more likely to get up on top of that little film of water. So sometimes a narrower tire, proves to be a much better rain tire than others. But the grip is still what it's going to be, and it's just with this level of moisture on the track, it's just not there.
Oh, the bus stop is so wet. This is actually wetter than it was at the very beginning of the day, Greg, so that's going to be extra treacherous there as we watch Michael work his way through the carousel now. So this is all just, I think, prep for the podium sprint because these are the conditions you're going to have, and you're going to get 2 laps to put it on, and we'll see the bravery rise quite a bit in those 2 laps. There's a Mazda 2, another Mazda 2 that we've got here this weekend. That's an interesting platform in the realm of all the Honda Fits that we see, to see another small economy car really be competitive in this category alongside the Fiestas and I don't know if we've seen a Yaris or a Matrix yet, but those would drop in here pretty well.
I don't recall it, but they would. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you're right. And the thing is, you've got those 2 laps, and if you haven't been out on a track in similar conditions when it's wet like this, it's very difficult. In 1 lap, essentially, you get released. So you've got that lap and maybe that first counted lap to try and figure out where you can be fast, where you've got to be very careful, where this water puddle is going to be, that sort of thing. So getting as much track knowledge as you can early, so when you come out and you can just really hustle it for those 2 laps, can make a huge difference.
Here's a name on the bottom of the timing and scoring we haven't really talked a lot about this weekend is Trip Walker in the 184 down in 13th place. Remember Tripp from CMP? He was running his FRS in the time attack competition there. He made it all the way to the podium sprint. He was running at NCM Motorsports Park a couple of weeks ago and had an oil fire under the hood of that car. It didn't completely destroy it, but it definitely cooked it a little bit. So he brought his Honda Fit out here to still get a little bit of fun here at Watkins Glen. So cool to see him back, albeit not in his normal hot rod there, that FRS that he has K-swapped. I think an oil line popped off and whoop, up it went.
Well, you know what? He may not be really all that bummed that he isn't here in that original car, because these front-wheel drive cars in these conditions are going to be a lot more friendly.
Certainly would be. Michael Ross Smith improved on his session best, a 251.975, but again, this is all testing for later today rather than qualifying as the intention is, but continues now down to the bottom. Turn 2 is the lowest point on this racetrack. You think turn 7 is, but you look at a map and how the scale and the grade of the property is. Turn 2 is the lowest point, and all the water runs downhill from the S's and kind of pools at the bottom there. So you have to be cautious of that as well as you're accelerating up, and the barriers close way in on you there.
It's interesting. You've talked about, it's a 110-foot climb from 2 up to the exit of the S's, which is essentially turn 4. And 110 feet, that's at least 10 stories in terms of a building. So that's a pretty substantial climb you're making in between barriers that, for the most part, are right on the edge of the track. And then let's throw a little moisture on the track just for a little bit of an extra challenge.
Yeah, we were talking about the water hiding in the curbs, but now it's just everywhere. So there is some puddles and things, and there's the checkered flag on this session, so they'll get to come back to the, well, they're going to have to come in this time. But Jacob Abbott in the newer generation Honda Fit, he is the winner from Carolina Motorsports Park. And these newer Honda Fits have a little bit, funny enough, too much power for this category, so they actually have to be ballasted up a little bit to be legal. It's a 25-to-1 power-to-weight ratio. For reference, Gridlife Touring Cup is 12.5-to-1, so these are basically either twice as heavy or half as powerful. Usually it's the other way, half as powerful. Making about 95 to 100 wheel horsepower on the dyno. Not a lot, but enough to party.
Well, and what it does, aside from giving you a really relatively inexpensive way to go racing, the other thing that it does is when you have a car like these, which by design are underpowered for the weight, when you think of a race car, they're perfect for running and getting groceries and everything. But as a race car, it's a great teaching opportunity, because no matter what level of power in a car you're driving, if you can carry more speed through a corner than your competitor, you're going to beat them. And in these cars, that it's all momentum, and you have got to flow speed. So you're not chucking these things into corners. You're doing everything you can to be as smooth as you can and stay right on the edge of the limit all the way around. And when you learn how to do that, then as you step up into higher horsepower stuff, you're going to be very quick relative to some of your other competitors. So it's a great training ground.
And it certainly is. If you look at Tom O'Gorman, this is where his professional career started, was running B-Spec Honda Fits. And that's where he learned how to race and got his cut his teeth in the professional motorsports world before moving on to other front drive platforms like the Honda Civic TCA car, and then stepped foot into the Audi RS3 and Honda Civic Type R TCR cars. So these are really the great way to learn how to carry speed, and that doesn't go away when you get in a Corvette. It's just you've got more power now to assist you down the straightaway as well.
Right, but if the guy you're racing has similar power, and you exit that turn 2-3 miles an hour faster, you got that advantage all the way to the next braking zone. And you think about what Tom did, right? Runs here, runs in the B-Spec cars. When he got the opportunity to go and run the TCR cars in the IMSA Pro Series, right? Those cars are all relative. I mean, they're different manufacturers, but same power, same drive. Everything is pretty spec on those cars. He wins Daytona, he wins Sebring. Why? Because he knew how to carry speed.
Yep, it's a fascinating story, and we're going to move now from our Falcon Sunday Cup group into the Falcon Club TR group, which was a pretty sizable group. Now, they originally started the weekend sharing track time, which is how we did it at CMP, but there are so many Club TR cars here that they decided to split because the traffic was getting pretty bad. And now on pit lane, there's about a dozen cars that are ready to go, including Dana Basinski in that 109. That's that K-Swap BRZ, the orange ASM car. And Dana, again, prepping that for eventual use in Gridlife Touring Cup, leading the way in the standings here this weekend. But now these Club TR cars, this is a category that is designed for kind of enthusiast builds of common chassis. So S2000s, GR86s, FRSs, BRZs. We see Miatas in Club TR sometimes. It's just a really good category for lightweight rear-wheel drive. The challenge here is that people have found how to make so much power out of these little 4-cylinder engines that engine swaps are very popular, and they're illegal. You can't open the engine. You can't modify the internals of the engine. So in Dana's case, he's got basically a bone stock K24 that has just been transplanted from a Honda right into his BRZ, and that's how he's been going quick around here. He was the runner-up in the championship last year to Grant Davidson, who has a front drive Integra. Grant's not here. If he was here, it'd be a very tight race at the front, Greg. They were nip and tuck all last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And in these conditions, obviously, front drive where it's pulling you around and you just sort of point those front wheels in the direction you want to go and start to feed it throttle, and it just pulls you around corners, is a big assist. I like that concept that you can't modify a motor, but if you don't like the one you have, just replace it.
Yeah, and the idea there is that to get in and start modifying engines is really intensive and expensive, and there's so much testing that goes into all these things. So if you can wire up a Haltech ECU or any other kind of electronic engine management system, and you can go get a junkyard engine out of a Acura or a Honda, you can drop it into pretty much anything. They were looking at earlier at a GLTC Chevy S10 pickup that has a Honda engine in it. That's been a popular swap, but there's other things you can do. We've seen other kinds of engine swaps, but that just seems to be the popular, easy-to-go choice. Dana makes about 215 horsepower out of that car, which is a lot for a 4-cylinder, and that car weighs about 2,500 pounds, so it's very light on top of that. So,
but you're restricted when you do the engine change. We've seen in GLTC, there are BRZs out there with Chevy V8s in it.
Yes.
In Club TR, you're not going to be able to drop one of those.
No, it's certainly not. And while this is not a power-to-weight series like GLTC is,
right,
the rule sets are similar enough that the lap times we're going to see are pretty close. So Dana's best time was a 209.3. We saw a 206 in Gridlife Touring Cup qualifying the other day, so we're not that far off, and I don't think Dana really had a clear dry track like the GLTC guys did in the
That's
drive.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So I think we'd see it even be a little bit closer than that. So Basinski was quickest earlier the weekend at 209.346. Lyle Zyra, that's a GR86. De La Rosa, I believe, is an S2000. So is Koval and Fitzgerald. So a lot of Honda S2000s. And Greg, we've talked at length about that chassis and how it probably is one of Honda's best cars that they've ever built. But you can't get them anymore, and they're getting harder and harder to get parts for. And that's why you're seeing a lot more GR86s and BRZs pop up, because they're kind of the, not a direct replacement for, but kind of a spiritual successor in the market to a Honda S2000.
Absolutely. And the S2000, the engine in those is a kind of a, the factory is kind of high revving, and as you talked about, really difficult to get parts and the like, and they rev high, so they tend to be a little less reliable because you're pushing them so hard. So that's a car that a number of the GLTC competitors and others do that engine swap, and they put a motor in that'll just run and run and run and run and run, and because it's going to get balanced with weight and modifiers anyway.
Right, and the goal, and as we talk about GLTC detuning, why would you throw a V8 in there? Well, because if you throw a V8 in, you detune it down to 250 horsepower when it made 500. Now your power curve is flat. You make 250 horsepower at 2,000 RPM and 7,000 RPM, whereas some of the cars that don't have that ability to detune, they make their peak power way up at $7,000 and don't have anything down low in the RPM range. So leaving corners, the Corvettes, the 370Zs, those things will just sprint away, but they might lack handling a little bit. They have to be a little heavier to carry all that power, and so there's your trade-off there.
And just to, so everybody knows, the top 5 at this stage, and again, they're probably going to stay. The biggest concern here is you want to be out. We've talked about it. If you're in that top 5, get some track time, but you don't want to throw it off the track and create an issue. And it's Basinski up top by about 1.4 seconds. Lyle Zyra in the GR86, Freddie De La Rosa in the S2000, Matt Koval, and Blake Fitzgerald is the guy who sits in the 5th spot. His best time at 2:12.4. Dead Boys Racing, it's a 2:13.3. So about 9/10 he's clear of them. But again, this track is 20 to 30 seconds slower than it would have been in that session anyway.
And that just goes to show you how important yesterday was. And from a change from last year when not every session really mattered. You could run your quick lap on Friday, you could run it on Sunday, but now yesterday was critical because that really was the qualifying session that will set us up for later today. Despite them having 3 opportunities, realistically there was only actually 1. And so now they're stuck in a spot of, okay, I'm not going to make qualifying. All I can do is go out there and get practice and hopefully get a quick wet lap, maybe get a wet lap record. But it's just, if you're not in now, it's going to be very difficult to get yourself in.
Exactly. So you're either in the top 5 from yesterday and you're using this as practice to get ready for that, or you're out there to get points if you're looking at this from a season championship, because you do get points from 6 on down for a ways. And some of it is, look, I paid my entry fee, I made the long haul here, and this is Watkins Glen. I want to drive it.
Certainly. Here is a look at the 230. That's Persing behind the wheel of that Toyota Celica. Interesting little car, and running 8th in class. That's a really solid run for that vehicle so far here this weekend. And up inside the top 10, and Ben Carter in 10th in that number 611. We saw him back at Carolina Motorsports Park. Didn't really have a representative lap yesterday, and at least not a good enough one to put him up in the mix. But Blake Fitzgerald, we saw him at Lime Rock Park last year. He was right up at the front. So it's going to be fun between those up at the front, between the S2000s and the GR86 BRZ platforms of Basinski and Zira.
And you had talked about, earlier when the curbs were a little wet, down in the alligator teeth. Now it's all wet. Yeah.
See the wiggle there on the rumble strips?
It's all wet, and that's what I was going to get to. Anything with paint, though, is going to have less grip than anything that's just tarmac. So those curbs are still going to be diabolical. And you still, even though everything's wet, when it's one thing to have that wet sheen on the track, it's a different thing to have a puddle. And if you've ever been driving on the interstate and you get surprised by a puddle you don't see and you're doing 70 miles an hour and you feel that car hydroplane just for that instant, it gets up there and you feel that move, that's still going to be something you've got to be very aware of when you get out there in these sessions. And in particular, for that 2-lap podium sprint, you need to know where those puddles are. You need to know where those little rivers could be across the track, and just make sure you're as straight as possible if you have to run across them or through them.
I'll tell you what, Dana's doing a great job exploring the limits right now. Just ran a 237.1. He's certainly on it, experimenting and trying. He's cooking down the straightaway here, and I think he also knows that he's probably got the best prepped car for the category here this weekend, but it doesn't matter because it's so wet and slippery. All the things that you've done to your car to make it faster are not really going to matter. It's going to come down to the driver at the end of the day. That will bring Zira, De La Rosa, Koval into the mix, and he's got to drive very well. He's doing that right now, but exploring the limits in that ASM sponsored BRZ. Into the boot section again, which has been a treacherous section forever. It fundamentally has not changed since it was built. The walls have not moved since it was built, and that's a tricky section to get down through.
And with that paving they did in 2015 in the dry, it's still awfully fast through there because of all the grip, and it's still challenging in these conditions. And just watching him run out there at this stage, and people are wondering maybe, okay, from a driving perspective, what are some of the differences? Well, one of the key things from dry to wet is dry is physically demanding on the driver because you get all those loads. You get so much grip and stick, especially on this track with that repaving, that the side loads you're feeling on your neck, on your body, your shoulders, the braking Gs, the XL Gs if you have lots of horsepower, that goes away in the wet because the car slides and you drive it much more gentle. But the mental toll it takes in the wet, you'll see drivers get out of these cars and they're absolutely wiped, and it's not anything physical. They just mentally, sometimes you can't even speak for a while because you've just had to be so focused because you got to feel every little flick and be ready to make those minuscule corrections, otherwise to catch those slides. Otherwise, away it goes.
Yeah, much tidier run through turn 10 that time for Dana, and the wipers are going at full blast right now, and that just tells you that it's not raining. It doesn't look like it's raining that heavily, but the spray being kicked up, all the residual water that's floating around, that's what's being the distraction in the windshield for Basinski. Is it faster this time? It is a 236.704, so a pickup by about a half a second for Dana, continuing to find that limit and push past it. And we're seeing, Greg, same thing we saw at the tail end of Q2. The clouds are starting to lift again, and this has just been doing this undulation all day of clouds lifting, track dries a little bit, clouds come back down, track gets wetter, and who knows how bad it's going to be for the podium sprint, but it's not going to be good, so you're going to have to prepare for the worst.
It's funny you said that because you were looking at the sky. I was just looking in the paddock, and I'm seeing people walking around with their umbrellas folded up and just walking around, so clearly the rain has lifted. It might still be that little bit of mist on occasion, but you're absolutely right. It's just getting brighter out there, and that's a great sign indeed. And that it's still got a pretty stout wind, and so this track, we saw it never got totally dry by any means, but it sure got better. And people were, whoa, yeah. We had started in the first session this morning, something like 40 seconds off. And we got down to within 10 seconds of the lap time, and now it got wet enough that we're back up to 25 seconds off time.
Yeah, which seems like a lot still, but I mean that's much closer than we were a little while ago.
Yep.
As I think that's a GRD6 working its way through one of the red. There's a handful of red GRD6s here this weekend. One of them is a Zira, but he's got some graphics on it as well. Here's the 323. That's De La Rosa. That is currently qualified third in the NOS Energy Track Battle Championship Falcon Club TR class. So he will be in the podium sprint later today. He's third in this session as well, about 2 seconds behind Zira in the GR86. So really interesting spread between this group. And there's also the Not Fast Motorsports FRS on track. That is running the FA20, the Subaru-sourced engine that comes in that car. They're down in, looks like 13th place. And there's the Dead Boys FRS. And Greg, frustrating.
Oh, for sure.
To be a second off of qualifying in and not have the track temp or track dryness to be able to go up there and compete like he did at CMP.
And he's out there, I mean, for one, he's sitting sixth. He wants to get those sixth-place points. But the other thing is, and nobody here is going to wish this on one of your competitors because they're pretty much all friends as well, but should one of those guys in the top 5 have some issue, then he would be moved up into it. So he wants to be ready for it if that opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, certainly, and we've seen that in Sunday Cup, that drivers just outside have had problems. One driver in has had problems, so that shifts the cut line around as you get throughout the day, and you never really know, and you can't plan on not being in it until you're definitely not in it. You have to make sure that you're ready. Here comes Zira with the black graphic on the hood through turn number 10, the GR86. Again, this is running the stock engine, obviously the FA24, the updated 2.4-liter engine in this boxer-based platform, as the checkered flag falls on the Club TR group. So I think Dana, Lyle, and Freddie learned some really valuable information for later today, Greg. But Dana is going to be very hard to catch because he is 7 seconds clear. Okay, correction, 6 seconds because Zira just came through and improved of the next fastest car in the wet. That means that Basinski, not a shoe-in, but looking pretty solid for that podium sprint.
Well, it's interesting, and the other series that I'm doing a lot of this year is Moto America and the Superbikes. And Roger Hayden, who of course is a legend in racing, the top guy in Superbikes the last couple of years, Jake Gagne, every session he goes out and within 2-3 laps he's just topped the session by a bunch. And everybody has to play catch up. And Roger made a very good point. He said, you race what you practice. And Basinski was out there pushing it. We saw him wiggling. We saw him trying different lines. He was exploring, looking for every ounce of potential grip. Where can I be? Where shouldn't I be? And pushing the envelope just a bit. And that's going to pay, I think, huge dividends for him when that podium sprint comes around.
Checkered flag here for De La Rosa, so he will come back around. They're doing the checkered over there at the inner loop so they can just head straight back in without having to do another full lap around. Next up is going to be our street category. Joel, this has been a wet, slippery session. Not a lot of records being broken, obviously, but it's a challenge out there.
Yeah, I know. Just sitting back here, up here right now, and just watching this happen is just so cool. I mean, seeing them slide around in the wet, getting loose off turn 10. I mean, that's just really something.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. We're going to see a lot more of that coming because street class is up next. But Joel, thanks for joining us, man. It was a pleasure to have you up here. And stay dry, stay warm as best you can.
I'll try.
Find a good vantage point for the race that's coming up, GLTC Race 3 in about a half an hour, 40 minutes, because, boy, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
For sure, and I really appreciate you guys letting me come up here and experience this with you guys. Seeing this from this point of view is truly awesome.
Pretty cool, yeah. All right, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. And we'll see you in a little bit.
Yep, thanks.
Tire is engineered for today's high-performance vehicles. Built with added tread rigidity for precise handling and an advanced rubber compound that inspires confidence, rain or shine. Get more out of your sports coupe or sedan with the Azenis FK510.
Owning a car can be expensive. It can also be confusing. What? And when things don't go right, there's no doubt it could be frustrating. But it can also be a lot of fun. And for those reasons, FCP Hero exists. Check this out. Do you and your car a favor and head over to fcphero.com to learn more.
Hi, I'm Chris Forsberg, and when it comes to classics and high-performance cars, I only trust America's #1 racing oil, Valvoline VR1. It's built on Valvoline's long legacy in racing, so I can continue to build my own. With 2 times more zinc than the industry standard, VR1's high-performance formula is tested on the track and trusted on the road to ensure your engine is protected from metal-to-metal contact. And I use it so much, I haven't got my car on the bottle. That's why whether I'm racing or cruising, I protect everything I drive with Valvoline. Valvoline, trusted for over 150 years.
The Finger Lakes region of upstate New York is a gorgeous lakeside village down here in Watkins Glen International, and typically it would be a great little vacation spot. It's a little dreary and chilly today, but the clouds have lifted slightly. The rain is, for now, stopped falling. Greg Kramer, I'm Kyle Heyer. Welcome back to the Gridlife NOS Energy Track Battle Championship Qualifying 3. Street class is on track, Greg, and, well, here we go again, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of rinse and repeat, which again seems kind of apropos considering the weather. But really, it's the same story. If you're in it right now in that top 5, you want to be out there because odds are conditions are going to be similar for the podium sprint. If you're, back in the order a little bit and some people in front of you had some issues, you want to be out there because if they had some big issues and you can leapfrog them by 1 or 2 spots and you're in it for the season, that's points. You also want to just have the opportunity, if you made the long tow, to get here and lap the Glen. Wet or not, this is still a legendary, wonderful track. And to get out there and say, hey, what'd you do last weekend? I went and drove, spent my time racing cars at the Glen. That's pretty cool.
It is really cool. And again, all this is shaping up for our competition at the end of this. Well, it's not that far away, I should say.
It's coming
we
up.
have GLTC next, and then we'll have Drift, and then we'll have our podium sprint, which is our top 5 from each of our time attack classes, each getting a moment on the racetrack to themselves to prove that they're the fastest driver here in their respective category. And it's going to be exciting. I know it's been a little bit of a slow kind of roll through this morning with these qualifying sessions because all the fast laps were on yesterday. No one's really pushing it. But when we get to the podium sprint, you're going to have to, and that's just the nature of the beast.
And, you think about just racing in general, legendary, events, and it all the way down to the grassroots level to just club racing. The way it works sometimes is one day is dry, the other day's wet. And if you got a good time in the dry and that day's time counts for qualifying or whatever, then good on you. That's just how it falls sometimes. And so you make your effort, you pay attention to the weather forecast, you understand, wow, it's really looking sketchy tomorrow. Today looks pretty decent. I better put a really good lap in today, the best lap that I can in these conditions today, because that might make a difference. And for the top 5 in this category right now, in the 777 of Josh Hulka in his WRX, the 333 of Anthony Barber in the Model 3 Performance, the 470 of Edward Siegel in his Civic Type R, 495 Richard Cho in his Nissan 370Z, and the 994 of Nathan Brown in his VW GTI. Those are the 5 guys right now that are in that advancement category to go to the podium sprint based on what happened yesterday. And so for those 5, this is the opportunity to get out there, put some laps in, so that when you get to that podium sprint, which will be the next session after this for the NOS Energy Track Battle Championship, to have some pretty fresh ideas, fresh memories, recent track knowledge, to be able to go out and cinch it up and put in those 2 flyers.
So I got a text earlier from Josh Hulka, who is at the top of the board right now in our street category, and he told me basically he's having an engine issue of some kind. So his plan is he's going to drive his dad's GC Impreza in podium sprint, which is the number 7 that's currently scored 14th quick in street class. So he's going to run another street class Subaru from his team. It's the same livery and everything, just very different car, but that's all he's going to have to run in the podium sprint.
Wow.
So very interesting that he is the top seed going in, and it's going to be quite the drive there to keep that car on top of the board.
The one thing he has going for him in either of those cars is it is an all-wheel drive car, which is going to make a big difference in the wet. And we say that with there's always a caveat to that stuff. Like, you say a front drive car is so much better in the wet than a rear drive. Yes, in theory it can be, but nothing will rewrite the laws of physics. And if you exceed the grip coefficient of the tires with the water and the track, no matter what age you have, no matter if it's all-wheel drive, rear wheel, front wheel, you're going to slide and spin and go off, whatever. So it's a comfort factor. All 4 wheels digging helps you with a bit more stable, maybe a bit more confidence inspiring. But it isn't a panacea. It doesn't just say, all right, you can do whatever you want. So.
Here's Nathan Brown in the 994 Volkswagen Golf, working his way around. He is currently in the podium sprint as it stands, currently scored in position number 5, just clinging to it, not by a lot, but he's got it. It's a 9/10 of a second back to Cody Umba in the number 69.
And you got a feel for Cody, right?
Yeah.
It's 9/10 back with an opportunity to do something, if only it were dry.
If only it were dry. And again, a 214 or better is not going to be possible in these conditions. So Nathan Brown he put in the work yesterday.
He did.
And it's paying off. And he was at Carolina Motorsports Park as well and missed the podium sprint there. So he's in a great position to really experience the podium sprint here at Watkins Glen today.
And to me, this is going to be really fascinating because in only its second running, right, this new, to me, revolutionary concept for the time attack style of motorsport, in only its second running, happens in the wet and at one of the great tracks ever. Talk about a place to really put on one heck of a show.
And I think we're going to see probably a pretty large lap time spread because some drivers will go out there and go, all right, I'm in the competition, but I just want to get home.
Yep.
So they're just going to go out there and run it whatever lap they can.
5th place points are fine with me. Yeah, exactly.
And some drivers will go, hey, I got an in-close and I got a whole team. Let's go out there and go for it. And we're going to see a very different mindset depending on the classes and the drivers involved. So it'll be a fun watch here. Here's a BRZ, by the way, Greg. This is punching way above its weight in this particular class. That's the number 997 car in this category. And BRZ not really prepped all the way to the limit of the street class rule set, but doing the best he can. That's Jason Gatos out of Wolverine Lake, Michigan in a 2022 BRZ. And he's scored in 10th in street, which honestly is a very, very impressive drive considering the level of power that the top street class cars have.
And again, in the wet, sometimes having a slightly underpowered car relative to some of the others can actually be a benefit because you're less likely to have a power oversteer, right? A snap oversteer out of power. And so you can use it a little bit. And I think a guy that really needs to sort of be celebrated out here, I mean, up front, you've got, right now in that top 5, you've got 2 all-wheel drive cars, 2 front-wheel drive cars, and Richard Cho in the Nissan 370Z rear-wheel drive car with a pipey engine in it. And he made it to the top 5. In those conditions, they weren't awash like this, but it was damp. He did one heck of a job in that car.
Street Mod is also on track, and on top of the board there is Jamie Santos. You're looking at Nick Kors now in the Civic. He is currently scored in third as he heads up the hill and heads for home. So Santos, Amick, Kors, Cody Smith, and Tim Lutz. Now, Cody Smith is in that's the 736. That's the Cutlass.
Yep.
Now, he got into the wall yesterday, Greg, and had walloped it pretty good with the right front, but he was out on track earlier today and doing just fine. So that's good news, but he did find the blue bushes here a little bit, either late yesterday or early this morning.
And I'll tell you, the guy in Street Mod who's got to be going, this is just unbelievable, is the 321, the 350Z of Philip Ju, because he literally, to the 10th of a second, absolutely identical to the last guy on the cut, 517 Tim Lutz in his Corvette, who sits in that 5th spot. To the 10th, they were absolutely equal. So it was within the hundredths of a second that Philip Ju just missed that cut, and he can't do anything about it.
Right,
So-
right. You're stuck. I mean, and that's the frustrating thing. I mean, it's so close there, Greg. It's just that's the nature of the beast. Everything counts. Everything matters. And in theory, the way that this format works, you only need 2 quick laps, one in qualifying, one in the podium sprint. But the reality is reliability and the ability to go out there and immediately get a good banker lap in has mattered a lot this weekend. There's another Hyundai Elantra rolling its way around course. Again, such a unique, cool sports sedan that Hyundai produces. And again, we've got one borrowed for the year for our side, and got a chance to drive one on track. A phenomenal car. Love the auto rev match. Love the gearbox. It stops pretty well on all the stock brakes and everything, and it definitely goes down the straights.
Well, and for the weight, the power it's got, that thing scoots. When you pulled out on track and you drop the hammer, it plants you. And that's pretty exciting for a small sports scoop like that, as you said. Really impressive stuff. So I would think we're going to see Hulka in that other car in this session.
I would have thought, but I have not yet seen him on track. Otherwise, unless they're just going to save it for the podium sprint, which is total, or maybe they're trying to work on the other car and skip this session. They're not going to go faster. Might as well, if you're going to fix something in the paddock, this is your time to do it. If it's a solvable problem, at least.
Yeah, exactly. My thought was if you're going to run the other car, it's same manufacturer, but it's a different car, different platform, just to go out and get a feel for it. I have a feeling he's driven that car a lot too over the years, so he's probably pretty comfortable in it regardless.
I would say so. I think it's going to be different. I'm curious about, from the rules side of that, driving a different car, but it's one of those situations where no one's going to say anything because that car is not as fast.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not as good as his the 777 that he's been running. But really good looking liveries on those cars, by the way. The Turn-In Concepts cars have all got new liveries, including Tony. Hey, there it is, by the way. He is on track. There's the number 7.
All right.
Not sure if that's Tom or Josh behind the wheel. I guess we can't know that, but the car is on track.
Well, and that's smart. If it is him, it's just smart to go out. And again, he knows the car, but that car, how it reacts in these conditions might be a little different than his regular mount. So it's not a bad idea to just go out and go, oh, okay, I got it. Mine would normally I could just track right up and over that. This one I really can't. All of that's going to make a big difference come that podium sprint.
You only get 2 laps. You get a warm-up, you get 2 flyers, and that's it. So you don't have a lot of time to test and practice much of anything when it comes competition time here in a little bit.
And there's different mindsets on those 2 flyers too, right? Some people will say, I'm going to treat that first flyer, that's going to be another warm-up lap. Especially in these conditions, right? I'm going to explore a little bit. Then I'm going to go for my flyer. Others are going to say, no, I want to push in that first lap because if I have a mistake and I skate wide in the inner loop or something, I've got another lap to go, okay, I can't do that now. Now I've got another lap to apply what I just learned in that and try and bring it home. So it's going to be interesting to see what approach is taken out there.
Definitely will be. Street GT lining up. This is a big grid of cars, Greg. It's been big all weekend. 24, I think we had on the timing and scoring, led by Ido Waxman, who is the top seed for the podium sprint later today. He's
not by a small margin.
No, it's by a lot. 4 or 5 seconds, to the point where we didn't know if it was a legal time.
Exactly.
And we had to double check with timing, and indeed it was a legal time. It was just he has definitely got an advantage. Keenan Prusenk in the 187, second in Street GT, then Jackie Ding, Andy Volkel, and Kyle Magnuson. He's on the bubble by 0.7 of a second over Mike Kubiak.
It's going to be interesting to me in this category because there's some really good drivers up there, and Ido had that big lap But Jackie Ding has just so much experience pushing cars at their absolute limit. He's a wheelman, to be sure. And in these conditions, it'll be interesting to see what he can dig out in that podium sprint. Maybe we'll get a little precursor of that here in this session, assuming that he goes out and puts some laps in. And because that M2 platform is new enough to him, I would think he'll definitely be out there just trying to get a few laps in to get ready for that. And, again, we've got another situation here where Michael Kubiak in the number 361 Corvette, 0.8 of a second off of Kyle Magnussen's top 5 cut time. And, again, not going to be able to do much with it. But I think that's the stuff that James Houghton was talking about when he said, I'm a broken man, Greg. Motorsports has broken me because I keep submitting myself. The highs are the highs, but the lows can be really frustrating. But you keep coming back because there's nothing quite like crawling behind the wheel of that car.
Yeah, and fundamentally, it's not much different than we would have had last year anyway, right? You wouldn't have been able to beat that time in the conditions anyway, so it's not like you're going to win the weekend prior either. So the format really didn't change a lot there. What it did change is just having to stay in the weekend and continue to progress, whereas before you'd say, all right, it's worse today, I'm not even going to bother driving.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't. But now there's a reason to go out there and a reason to put in laps.
Absolutely. And what it's done is revolutionize the presentation of it as well. And I think for the crowd at the track, you love seeing cars coming by you at speed. That's great. But it's always better, when there's an actual sort of head-to-head competition thing. And, good PA announcers at a track, they can make that out of a time attack session. But with the new podium sprint format, it's very clear. And you get to see each car by itself. And for those that are watching on the stream, in particular, where we can call each car around for 2 laps, watch, little bobble there. Boy, he got a great run out of that corner. This should be a better lap, and be able to, sort of lead them a little bit and let them see each of these laps. And it really, really puts the onus on the driver because you can't go out and run around for 4 or 5 laps and then go, okay, now I'm ready.
Right.
It's dial it up, get after it.
Right. And that we gave them 2 laps so that they have at least one to work on it. And we saw a lot of drivers improve on their second lap at CMP. I'd expect the same to be true here today. Here's Ito Waxman. He's the guy that ran the 201 yesterday that had everyone guessing about how he was able to go that fast given the conditions and no aero. But he
not a drop. Yeah, that's the impressive thing.
Drove the wheels off the damn thing. So that's how he's running where he is.
Well, and right there you can see already in this, and we saw it when we did see him on camera yesterday. He was immediately, even though it wasn't anywhere near as wet as this, it was damp. It was plenty damp. And he was immediately running the wide lines around corners. He understands the rain line, how to drive it, and that's where he went, and it paid off big.
So up on track now is the Street GT category. This is our largest class here this weekend, which is 24 cars. As far as I know, that's the largest Street GT class we've ever had in Gridlife. We've had only a larger class than this in general, I think, once, and that was a Falcon Club TR group, I think at NCM Motorsports Park last year we had 25 or 26. But as far as a single class goes, other than GLTC, obviously, this is one of the largest single classes we have ever had.
And that's impressive, and, this is sort of the big horsepower equivalent, in a way, to the Sunday Cup, right? They're basically stock cars, but they're the big thumpers, the pony cars and the like. And so again, it's not where you get a car and then you modify it like crazy, like Track Mod or Unlimited, or even Street Mod, where you can make some substantial mods. Here, it's all right. I want to buy and compete in a really powerful pony car, and but I don't need to do a lot to it. And Udo showed us that. You don't need to have the big wings on. And his time relative to, like, Street Mod was really competitive.
It was, and as he comes up onto the front straightaway, one of the guys that was chasing him was Jackie Ding in that blue M2 behind him. And Jackie will be competing against Ito in the podium sprint, and he's following his competition right now into turn 1 down there at the 90, bottom of the hill. And we'll see if he can stay in that draft and maybe get a little bit of a tow up the back straightaway. That was a big deal in Club TR and Sunday Cup. Not sure how big of a difference it'll make in Street GT, Greg, but it certainly will not hurt.
Absolutely. And it makes a difference. Anything, when you're at a track where you're running really high top-end speeds, and this is a track that does that, any kind of a little tow you can get isn't going to hurt you at all. What you have to be very mindful of in the wet when you get a pull like that is you're going to be going quicker than you think you're going when you get into that braking zone. and it's wet, and so you've got to be a little bit careful there. I'll tell you, Udo is it's not like he's just trundling around.
No, he's definitely not trundling around right now. He's going for it. So is Jackie Ding behind him. But Jackie is in a much newer chassis. This is a 22 or 23 M2 versus the C6 generation Corvette, and it's amazing how far cars have come in just technology in general, from suspension and all the optimizations that manufacturers have made to make them just better to drive in general on the street, but that translates to better grip on the racetrack. We'll see how much of a difference it does make.
And that just really, again, points out what a lap it was that Udo threw in there. Just an impressive run for him to be absolutely no question about it.
And here's Alex Arteat on track. This is the number 7. No, this isn't Alex. This is what car?
Is that Justin Rubble in the M2?
The 513 car.
Yeah, it's Justin.
It's Justin Rubble, yep. Arteat's in a very similar looking orange BMW, but they are right behind each other, 207.379 versus a 207.528, right with each other, and both just out of podium sprint contention as it stands.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, you look at that right now, 6th down to 9th, they are covered by 0.8 of a second. Yeah, and just that tick out of that transfer spot from Friday, and that's the kind of thing that'll have you pulling your hair out. Is like, I know I gave up, 0.4 in this spot of the track, and and in your mind you're going, if I just driven this like this, I could be up there now. So, but that's part of the lesson and learning curve that you have in this, and they will remember that the next time they look at a weather forecast and one day is drier than the other one. They will know, dial it up now.
So, Street GT's on track. Up next will be Track Modified and Unlimited. They're going to go one final time, and that will conclude the qualifying for the NOS Energy Track Battle Championship. Up next will be Gridlife Touring Cup, race number 3 in about 20 minutes time, Greg. So that's coming quick. And then we'll have a little bit more drift, and then Track Battle Podium Sprint, followed by our last race of the weekend. And we'll have a little bit more action on track, but not on the live stream for the end of the day. So here comes Waxman down the backstretch here at speed. He's put some distance on Jackie Ding. How aggressive does he charge the bus stop here? Pretty shallow entry, nips the curb on the right, skips the one on the left, tracks out middle of the road, gets that puddle. Watch the, ooh, that was very tight to the rumbles, but nice clean exit out of the bus stop.
Yeah, no wiggle there. So, and that was the same line out of the bus stop that he'd run the previous lap. I think he's comfortable with that. And the reason that he might be doing that shallow entry into the bus stop is because, again, that's offline. When you move to the right like that, early in the braking zone, it's offline. That's where in the wet you're going to find a little more grip. And so he moves over onto that, just sort of straight lines to that first little apex, right? And then just turns it in and then drives the rest of the corner. What it does is that speed that big power Corvette is carrying from the exit of the S's into the inner loop, he just extends that for just a little bit. It's really a smart thing for him to be doing.
And Kyle Magnussen, very similar line here in this Porsche Cayman. Great cars. As far as performance value, these are very good. And there's a lot of people that will tell you that if you're looking for a solid street car, solid track car that can do it all and be reliable while doing it and look good while doing it, this is a car I would pick, certainly.
Yeah, tough to find something better that is, as you said, a good all-rounder.
Yeah,
sure.
At least especially if you're into European cars versus the American route of going to a Camaro or a Corvette or something of the sort. A Cayman is a really solid choice and not $911.
Yeah, exactly. And they do perform. They are consistent front runners, and the street stock level competitions that you see in some categories, and the GT4 variants of them are consistently right at the sharp end of any field. So that platform is just solid from the get-go.
So Ido Waxman has just run a 2:24.191. So again, we're still about 20 to 25 seconds off of the best times that we've seen so far this weekend. Jackie Ding right behind him at a 2:27.734 in this session. Nick Kors, Andy Volkel, the right behind him in street mod and street GT cars in terms of times in this session. Reminder also that the times on your screen on the live stream are overall times from the weekend, overall from qualifying, not from this particular session, right, unless they improve, which you would see with the green wipe, and then they would jump up the order.
So what we're basically showing you is where it says advancing. Those 5 are advancing right now into the podium sprint competition, which determines the weekend winner, the trophies, and the top 5 in points, of course. So that's what that's telling us. And I love the other graphic, chasing, because that's what you're doing. You're chasing them. You're trying to get into that. You're not going to do it today, but at least you're out there. You're driving at the Glen. And you're having some fun, one would hope.
I'm going to be honest, when we were deciding what to call the 2 different groups on the screen, we were going to say advancing and then eliminated, but we thought eliminated was too much of a negative word for the Gridlife vibe. So we said, hey, we're chasing. We're optimistic around here.
Always.
And remember that if you don't qualify for the podium sprint, your competition then has become the qualifying sessions that you've run. So you're not really eliminated. You're just not getting to run that one special session that is the podium sprint. You do get more track time tomorrow morning if you're 6th on down to get one last opportunity to improve your time. Can't get into the top 5, because that has already been set, but you can improve your time and maybe get a record lap.
Absolutely. And yeah, I agree with you. Eliminated is a little harsh. And chasing, I mean, that's part of the Gridlife paddock vibe, is the optimism, the fun, the inclusion, and you're not out of it. You're just right at this moment. You're not in it. So you're chasing. That's
exactly. Yeah. We'll go with that. Yep, it's fun, and I honestly think these at CMP we had these graphics, and as the sessions got faster throughout the weekend, we saw the shifting and shuffling, and unfortunately with the rain, we haven't really gotten to see them firing as exciting as we were expecting as drivers would improve throughout the weekend. But Gingerman's coming up in a little over a month and a half, so well, actually I guess it's a little over a month
coming up.
So that means that we'll get to see it again, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get a little bit better weather from the racing gods for that one.
You know, and I can see it being spun already, that Artead or Rubel or whoever ends up 6, right? When they get back, how'd your weekend go? Pretty good. I was tops in the chase.
Exactly. Yep. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And then, of course, on stream this year, we have Gingerman Raceway at our Midwest Festival coming up in June. Then we have our Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course event. That'll be August 5th through 7th or somewhere right around there. And then we head to Lime Rock Park. We've signed a 3-year deal with Lime Rock Park last November, so we're so excited to be back to continue that through, I think, 2025. So that will be our Circuit Legends Festival, August 18 through 20. And then we'll finish off the year on our final live stream at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, all the way in California. That's a big step for us, a big step for all the competitors that are traveling to come with us. And we're hoping the California crowd will jump in there, and we're going to have a blast out there, I'm sure. GLTC will have their season finale there as well. And I know that there are a couple front-running competitors that are planning on being there.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a legendary track. There are a few places as pretty, if you like coastal stuff, than the Monterey Peninsula. It's just a great place to go spend some time. And the weather usually is very cooperative out there as well. So it's a lot of win-win, I think, there.
I think so, too. It's definitely a big step for us, a big step out of our kind of Midwestern roots. But honestly, so was the Northeast last year with Lime Rock Park, and the Northeast has embraced Gridlife with open arms. And this is another part of that. We went to Pit Race last October as well. And Pit Race, another amazing facility.
It really is.
Have you been there lately?
Yeah, last year for Moto America, and it was
phenomenal.
Blew me away.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's one of the nicest racetracks in the country.
And that turn 2 at Pit Race, that's for real.
It is for real.
That little hump right and you're just committed to that corner blind, and that's a fun piece of racetrack.
It really is, and it's just it's one of those places that kind of sneaks under your radar because it's considered a club level track. And you look at the list of tracks in North America that everyone knows. It's the Sebring, it's VIR, Watkins Glen, Road Atlanta, Road America, blah blah blah. You don't really think a lot about the club level circuits, the Autobahn Country Clubs, the Carolina Motorsports Parks, the Gingerman Raceways, the true gems of the average track day bro or gal. That this is what most of the country is racing on. Not everyone has the ability to race on tracks as awesome as this all the time. So, but there are hidden gems that aren't as well known, and I think Pit Race is a future classic for sure. I know it was originally known as Beaver Run or something like that.
Yep.
But I think with the new ownership it's got over there, they're in for a long, long future, I think.
I'll tell you the other one you guys need to be thinking of. I haven't been there yet, but the Moto America Series goes to. I'm going to it for the first time this year, so I've been asking around, checking into it, and everybody I've talked to said it is stunning. Just the facility's great, the track's great, but the vistas, the area is phenomenal, and it's the ridge. in Washington.
Okay.
And everybody has said it's just incredible. So if the race at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca is a success, I think going up into the Pacific Northwest to the Ridge could be a really special. And again, that's more of the top tier club level track, which really fits well into the ethos for Gridlife.
It certainly does. And again, beyond the 6 events that we're streaming this year, we also have another 6 or 7 other events that are not live streamed, that are the club weekend events, which are more of a traditional Gridlife experience, that are, they're a little bit less dollars for the entry fee, and it's focused on really HPDE and time attack only. And the goal is to get more track time and more on-track experience, and you can kind of choose your own path. And time attack, the points count in either one, so you can go to either and kind of choose your own path throughout the season in order to get the best mix of pro versus regional tracks. And I think that's a really special thing that we've got going on, is we're not locking you into one schedule versus another. You have the ability to kind of pick your own route. Now the GLTC guys are coming with us to all the six events that we're streaming, plus COTA, plus Road America. So they're kind of stuck with our stream schedule. But that was on by design in that respect.
Right.
So cars on track now, track modified and unlimited for their final session in the NOS Energy Track Battle Time Attack Championship Qualifying 3. This is all they've got to run down their best lap for the podium sprint a little bit later today. So heading up the hill on their warm-up lap, and again, the clouds again have done their lifting for the 50th time today.
Yeah, exactly. And the interesting thing, these cars, some of the newer cars out there, particularly Jason Kanarki in that, or Kanakri, excuse me, in the 77 McLaren, that car is supercar. And it's got all of the aids, the movable rear wing, ABS, traction control, all of that. But some of the other cars that are out there are older chassis that are highly modified. A lot of power, but no driver aids. They've got power, they've got downforce, but no driver aids. So it's an interesting study, isn't it, in watching these cars go out in these different conditions. And I'm trying to see who that is. I don't see the name. There is an older model BMW 2002 out there. That car looks like it could have run back in the glory era of world endurance racing. When I saw it yesterday in a pad, huge meats on the rear. They said it really doesn't fit into many classes because they've done so much work on it. But it's sitting still. It looks like it's going about 180 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's such a neat car. We saw this at Lime Rock Park at Circuit Legends, and it really is a great example of the kind of cars that Circuit Legends were trying to attract. Is cars that look like a display piece but are then on the racetrack, and this is a great example of that as he heads into the boot now and heads down the hill. And I think that is the 365 car. Thanks for the tight shot on that. That'll help us get the number. And the 365 on my sheet, I don't even have.
Nor do I. So I wonder if he was a late entry into this, because when I had talked to the dad and son that share that car that I was talking to, oftentimes they just run it in the HP, the high performance driving experience, HPDE sessions, and some sort of unofficial historic racing where they got the catch-all classes. But maybe they looked at it and said, this could be kind of fun in one of these NOS Energy Track Battle Championship classes. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and I hope we see more of that. I mean, I know FCP Hero brought some really cool-looking cars with them. We saw that Volvo wagon car that was used as a pace car in GLTC yesterday. They got some really neat builds over there in the FCP Hero paddock, and you should check them out if you're here at the racetrack. I can't remember the garage number, but it's right by the arcade, so go check out the arcade, the Jumbotron, the Advanced Auto Parts pit stop area to watch the live stream, and visit the NOS Energy group camp to get some free NOS, and then head over to Toyo Tires and check out their static displays. Really cool stuff. Thanks to the partners for being here in the paddock and all the others that make Gridlife possible. And here's that Mercedes out here as well. Now, this is another one of those FCP Euro cars that's joined us here. Right behind this BMW is that Mercedes that I'm talking about.
That's Nate Vincent, too.
Oh,
FCP Euro.
Is it?
In the 190 Evo.
Yep. And
that's too cool.
This was a car that was a static display at Lime Rock last year, and here it is on the racetrack. And what a photo op this is going to be for our Gridlife staff media. This is going to be such a – I mean, imagine the black and white photos coming out of this, Greg. Oh,
yeah.
My goodness.
With these two cars side by side.
I know that Matt Marcoux, Rob Wilkinson, and Chris Sullivan are floating around on the racetrack somewhere, and I'm sure they're listening to the PA. This is the time you got to get those cameras snapping for these guys on this track.
You bet you do. That is just really cool. Ooh, big of a wiggle there. You can hear that light up the rears.
I haven't seen Chris Sullivan here this weekend, but I know Rob is here, and I know Matt Marcoux is here. So they're heading up the S's now, those two classic-looking cars. And Scott Heckert, by the way, that 234 car, again, not participating in this session because he is on grid for the GLTC race coming up here in a couple of minutes. So tough to run unlimited in GLTC in the same weekend, clearly.
Yeah, it's talk about different vibe.
Definitely.
Those two cars. Both of them have a lot of power, but a vet and that stock car that he's got. And I see the driver inside the BMW signaling. I think that was a point by.
And into the bus stop here. Gonna nibble the curbs there just a little bit, but man, what a cool sight to see.
It is, and at the Glen, no less.
I mean, this isn't our Circuit Legends Festival, Greg, but it might as well be.
Yeah.
With this.
Well, you're getting a good taste of it here, that's for sure. And understandably, these guys in these conditions are tiptoeing relatively carefully out there. Understandably so.
Oh yeah, certainly.
Those are some pretty valuable cars.
I don't think the intention is to go out there and break any track records. I think a lot of this is partly for the media portion of it, get some photos of these cars operating on track. And that BMW, though, was competing at Lime Rock, so I wouldn't put it past them to get back out there and get on pace. Well, it looks like Washburn in the 365. That's who I'm seeing there on the 12th in the track mod category. Just really, really neat stuff as we continue to work our way through the track mod and unlimited groups here. In a minute, we're going to get a checkered, and we'll get prepared for our third GLTC race of the weekend. We've had wet races so far, and that trend will continue here this afternoon with the same group of drivers we've seen up front all weekend long, because we've set race 3 by the finishing order of race 2, and lots to cover when we get back in a couple of minutes for the GLTC race. I will also say I see Tony Marchev down on grid as well.
Oh, that's great to see.
He's down the paddock here a little bit, but it sounded like he had some assistance. We'll talk about that in the GLTC portion here in a couple minutes' time.
Ido Waxman right now, fastest lap in this session at 2:24, or so far today, fastest session at a 2:24.1 because of the obviously the weather conditions. But Jackie Ding, who in that M2 was 4.5 seconds off of Ido in their qualifying session in the dry, is now about, let's see, a 2:24 to a 2:27. So he's trimmed that by about, he's found almost 2 seconds. So that's pretty cool as well.
Down the backstretch into the bus stop, there's the Jason Kanakary car. He's still currently not in the podium sprint, but he's working on it.
Yeah, that's giving it everything you can. I mean, this is your last shot here, and obviously you don't want to, as you said, be putting the car into the trailer in bits and pieces. But if you're not in the podium sprint right now, this is your last chance to get out there and drive Watkins Glen. Wet or not, it's special.
It really is, and looks like the 338 heads up over the crest, down into turn number 6. And
boy, tricky corner this one.
Man, again, it has fundamentally changed. Essentially zero, other than the addition of the ripple curbing. It's not changed. I mean, the walls have not moved. I saw pictures from the 70s where this track was identical. But Greg, checkered flag falls here, so that's going to wrap up our NOS Energy Track Battle Time Attack qualifying 3 session, Greg. That was a fun one, but we've got a race to get going here in a couple minutes.
Yep, and what a fun way to wrap it up, watching those two older cars out there running together in tandem on the track. That was really cool to me.
We're going to step away for a brief moment. We'll be back with GLTC Race 3 in just a minute.